Hi all, good evening. Welcome to the 99 Next webinar. My name is Sugandhika Amaradasa, working at 99X Technology as a Senior Performance Engineering Lead. In this session, I would like to focus on strategies for early performance testing. What is early performance testing? As name implies, early performance testing is a performance test done in early stages of software development lifecycle. So, why it is important? If we talk about why early performance testing is important, there are various reasons. It will help to identify performance issues early stages at stages, and at the time of actual performance test could expect less bottlenecks being found. With early performance testing strategies, we could ensure improved code efficiencies from the beginning of the software development lifecycle. Also, developers get enough time to resolve issues as it's identified in early stages. Overall, early performance testing would make less burden at the time of the project delivery. Other than this, there are four other important factors as well. Like by doing early performance testing, you could reduce the cost of project delivery, and also your by doing early performance testing, you could get involve your performance tester as much as possible, as early as possible, and also you can accelerate the performance test process by introducing early performance testing strategies for your project. So my agenda is today as follows. I'm going to talk about early performance tests versus actual performance. And also I'm going to talk about code level profiling, and I will discuss code level profiling tools, techniques, and benefits. Also, there's another early performance testing technique called client-side profiling. I'm going to talk about that and tools and benefits of doing it. Other important strategies that could use in as early performance testing also I'm going to talk about. And also continuous performance testing practices, and how we could apply those practices in the early stages of performance testing cycle, also the one of my topic. If there is any questions, you could raise in the chat. With the time being, I will try to answer your questions. Okay, let's begin. So early performance testing is not typical performance test we conduct with load, such as load test and stress tests. We cover these tests in full performance test cycle. I mean, a load test and stress test, endurance test kind of tests we are covering in the full performance testing cycle. Doing a full performance testing is very important. The primary goal of full performance testing is to ensure that the application can handle the expected load and provide satisfactory user experience. For a successful product, should perform a full performance test cycle before release that product into the production environment. It will avoid a lot of issues occurs after product launch and after your users are started to comes in. So by introducing full performance test cycle, we can enhance the user experience, and also it will help you to meet the user expectation as well. Also, could identify the stability of the scalability of the application, which is useful to identify the resource requirement for the product and also for better resource management. Also, by doing full performance test cycle, you could identify the bottlenecks and weak point as well as help you to effectively plan your capacity. These are the few reasons we wanted to conduct the full performance test cycle. Plenty of other reasons also available to make full performance test cycle is important. But full performance test cycle typically conducted at the end of the development life cycle. If even if it's agile environment or if it's a typical all traditional way of development, we tend to do this full performance test cycle at the end of the end of the development life cycle, because we need to have a stable product to perform a full performance test because it's working with the lot. So because of that, it will be a bit late if we found lot of issues at the end of the software development life cycle. And let's see if your project you are planning to project launch in next week, and if you are finding a lot of performance issues in this week, that will be too late. So that's why early performance testing is very important for us to identify the performance issues before we do the full performance test cycle at the latter part of the development life cycle. Okay. So there are few early performance testing techniques. Since performance testing is conducted at the latter part of the software development life cycle, early performance testing technique comes handy to identify the performance bottleneck in the early stages of the software development life cycle. So in here, aspect which we could consider while early performance testing is code level profiling, client-side profiling, and also we could do some API level performance test as well as DB level performance test. Also, we could use some static performance testing technique as an early performance test technique. And these are the main areas that we cover in early stages of the performance testing. Testing. Okay, so apart from that, we could add some continuous performance testing concept in early stages of software development life cycle, and could make more value and could identify with a lot of issues without being late. Let's look at few of these technique and benefit of each of these techniques. So we'll start with the code level profiling. You may have heard, but what is code level profiling? So code level profiling is an early performance testing technique to evaluate the code. It will help to analyze and measure the execution of a code at a granular level. That's the most important, at a granular level. By using code level profiling tool, you could get an idea on how the code performs, how resource consumption was in each part of the code. And apart from that, code profiling tools identifies where the potential bottleneck exist by highlighting the hotspots. So when we talk about the code profiling tool, first start with discussing what are the benefit of using code level profiling tool. When we talk about the benefit of using code level profiling tool, first thing I see is to gather detailed information about an application runtime behavior, even up to method, submethod, and calls inside it. And it also helps to identify the areas of code that are slow, memory intensive, and causing performance issues. So these tools are capable of pinpointing up to specific line of code causing performance deviation. We call this behavior is a hotspot. They are highlighting hotspot of your code. These tools has a predefined threshold and hotspot. These threshold highlight based on this threshold highlight the code behavior and they will mark as a hotspot like we see in the image here. So this red color thing is hotspot. They have found the hotspot in this code method. So they have listed into granular level up to call each request in the code segment. And apart from the identify the hotspot, also the code profilers are capable of capturing functional hierarchy of the application and visualize the order of the execution. It means when you are running your code when you are in the runtime, you will see how your code, what are the code line are executing at each moment, and that order will be captured here as a functional hierarchy, and it will show as a order of execution and visualize like this in the tool, the profiling tool, and hope it's really helpful for developers to identify where the things went wrong by looking at the execution order of the code. Also, profiling information also there are profiling information also there's this information helps to identify the performance bottlenecks, memory leak, high resource consumption by analyzing these profiling information. There are a lot of information will collected throughout the profiling by this tool. We are going to talk about how we use them and some important aspect on these profiling tools. So next, so some profiling techniques and benefits. So benefit of each technique actually that I'm going to talk about next. Okay. When, give me a second. Sorry, I think I mistakenly went back. Yeah. So I think I'm in the correct page now. Okay. So other than the then I'm going to talk about here in the profiling techniques and benefit. So other than the capturing time in the granular level, these tools help to profile other component as well, like other component, other aspect of the code. So I would like to discuss some of benefit we could gain in each profiling technique that we have in these tools. So they have a technique. It's called first one is the CPU profiling. So with the CPU profiling, what you could identify is CPU intensive function, and you can optimize those functions. Also, that is really beneficial. If you can see here in the tool, in the screenshot, you can see the CPU. If you select each function or each method, you can see how much CPU has taken for the given call or given method or at the functional level. Okay. So, and also memory profiling is the next profiling type. It will help to identify the memory leak and fix them before they cause instability. Also, optimize the memory usage could improve the overall performance and stability. So that will help code profiling tool help to do that profiling as well. So the next one is thread profiling. This is also really important. It will identify the bottleneck related to thread synchronization. So and also it will optimize the thread interaction and enhance the parallelism and responsiveness. By looking at this profiler, you can improve your code and you can improve the aspect that we talked. Also, in this tool helps to do IO profiling. So then when we talk about the IO profiling, it will help to identify the slow or frequent IO operation impact the performance. Also, it is really important to optimize this IO operation for faster retrieval and storage. Right. So these are the four main things, and the next one is hotspot analysis. As we talk about the previous one, hotspot is where where the tools is highlighting the time based hotspot, I mean performance deviation. So then hotspot is the performance deviation that is highlighting by the tool. So for then if you are using a code profiling tool, effortlessly you could highlight them, and also you can choose most time consuming path, and you can see what are the less time consuming path, and or you can uh, optimize the code by looking at this timing, and also optimize by fixing those time as well. Also, one other fact that code level profile the profiling code level profiling tool does is real time profiling. So by identify the performance issue that occurs under real server usage, because we are execute while we do the this profiling, first we start the application and we run through the application, and we do the profile. So then it will capture the real world usage of the application, and you can see how functional hierarchy is, and how each calls work, and how what's went wrong, and you can use this profiling to debug and optimize the things in your code. Hope you get a good idea on profiling techniques. So let's see what kind of profiling tools that are available out there. So code profiling tools are based on the programming language. Almost all the languages has the code profiling tool. As an example, .NET based application has the tool called .trace. It is for .NET based application. So you could, if your code is written in .trace, you can use this tool. And if your code is written in Python, Python has a profiler tool called C Profiler. So you can use that for your code profiling. And if you are using, if your code base is Java, so you have a Java profiler, most known profiler. And also, if your code base is Node.js, it has Node.js profiler. So you could find a matching profiler for your code and do the code level profiling. And let's say we don't need a performance tester in future. So if you are a developer, you could become a performance tester while you coding. So now you know how to performance test while you coding, and you can have a good code base and optimized code when you release it into the actual performance test. And performance testers could not find much for bottlenecks, as you have a well optimized code. Okay, so that's about the code profiling tool. And next, I would like to talk about client-side profiling tool. It is important as much as code level profiling tool. What is client-side profiling? So this is something you all use day to day, but maybe I could add some value for your usage. So client side profiling is a process of profiling client side of the application or a system. This doesn't involve the server side. This is purely based on the client side. Client side is a front end, as we call in non terms, and components or process that operate on the client on the user device, such as web browser, called client side. And profiling in client side also a good strategy for early performance test. What is client side profiling do? Client side profiling is measuring and analyzing various matrices to ensure the client side is fast, responsive, and provide a smooth user experience even under any load condition. Right? Okay, so let's see what are the objective of client-side profiling. So when you talk about the objective, first one, I think it's important identify the potential bottleneck in the client side. So we will talk about the bottlenecks we could identify in the client side, but that is the one of the objective of the client side profiling. And optimize the rendering and load speed of the front end. That is the second objective of the client side profile. And also, we will have to enhance overall user satisfaction by profiling, client side profiling and client side optimizing. And also gain insight into how an application or system perform on the client side. That is the most important, how our application is perform in the client side is something really important to know. So we will deep down with on client side profiling. First I would like to start with the stages in web page load. Okay. So this is where we could start as like this is where we could start, and I think it's interesting for you to know. So here's a simplified view of what happens someone opens your website, right? The page load begin with the user when user initiate the navigation. For example, when you're typing your website URL or browser, sorry, website URL in the browser or clicking on a link, you will trigger the page load. Then browser queues the request and tries to resolve the domain name. Here it shows as DNS, and they then attempt to establish a secure connection to your server and send the request to the server. And your server process the request. This step include server-side logic like database queries, sending in the HTML, and your server begins sending it like that. And once your server process your request, the server starts sending back the response. Once browser receive this response, it will try to derive it and render the web page to user. So once we start initiate the page, like once browser receive the page response, it will make some other calls like for the style, JavaScript, images. Likewise, in browser client side, there are some requests made before the uh, page load in to the user. And once all the resources are available, page load events occurs, and all rendering and all other DOM components and everything getting loaded into your page, and you will see your page. So we are in the client side profiling, we measure the activity which conduct inside the browser, such as rendering the page and request for style sheets, JavaScript, images, and all synchronization and rendering, synchronization to load page in browser, we call client-side activities, and we are going to profile those activities and see how they are performing. So there are a lot of tools available in for the client-side profiling, though almost everything you may heard about. So, and you may have used daily, few of them I may have used in daily work. First tool is Chrome Developer Tool, and second one I listed here is the Firefox Developer Tool. And the third one, I think, Microsoft Edge Developer Tool. These are some common tools that you could use, and some specific tool like Lighthouse, Pingdom, and web page test. And also we can use Fiddler as well as we can use page speed. Those are the tools that we use for client-side profiling. Also, it's good to know what are the components available in the client side. So when you talk about component, these are the main components that available in the client side and we involve with client side profiling. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and asset. And other than that, these the things in this image also helpful. I'm not going to list down one by one. Right. How it could get, or how it is important, and we'll talk about that in the latter part of the presentation. So next, before I start to describe the how benefits, I would like to give you some key matrices and introduce some key matrices that you could it could help you to see the client side profiling in a different type. So this is first one, page load time. So then when we talk about page load time, as we saw in the previous image, page load time means that functions happen in the client side. And there's another key matrices for the client side profiling is time to first byte, when we receive the first byte. And also there's another key matrices for the client side profiling. It is when renders start. And also the next request, HTTP request, and also error rates. These are the key matrices that we use to analyze the client side profiling results. So each of these indicate how your client side is performing. So let's see few of them and try to understand how we could use these matrices to analyze the client side profiling. So page load time. So main objective of client side profiling is to measure the page load time. What is page load time? Page load times means measure the time take for web page and or application load completely. So it's include how long what is the network latency, what is the time for DNS loopback, what is the time for initial HTML load, how long took for rendering, how long took for CSS, and so how long took for JavaScript file load and execute. So these are the things we are measuring when we do the page load time. Okay, so and also apart from the page load time, there are few outcomes of client-side profiling as well. First one, we would say network request. Analyze the number of network requests made by your application and their sizes giving you a good indication of how client behave. So what kind of request that we are referring here? We are referring request for HTML load, request for CSS load, request for JavaScript load, and request for image load, and other resources that is necessary to show your page. And also we can see, and we can we can evaluate the network waterfall of the page on waterfall network diagram in your tool, and now you can identify long running requests and bottlenecks. So I actually forgot to mention in the previous slide, not in the previous slide, here these all these key matrices are part of the client side profiling tools. So you can actually, in almost every tool has these matrices, so you can you have to learn how to read them, right? So then we talk about network request, and then we talk about Java execution, and I will talk about bit deep on Java execution later, and rendering performance as well. And also we can we can get the outcome of memory usage for client side profiling. So it also help, as we mentioned before, helps to identify the memory leak in client side, or high resource memory usage in client side. And also if we have those, it could lead performance issues and crashes. Also, we could track user interaction of the application. That also we are going to talk about bit deep. And error tracking, that is obvious. If we have a issue, we normally see a developer tool and see what are the errors. So in here also we can here we are referring the same, and we can focus on JavaScript error, network error, and other runtime issues that affect the user experience. That also the outcome of doing a client profiling for your application. So as I would like to explain a bit more on Java execution time, because if you measure in this, you will get like specific benefit. What is Java execution time of time? It is a time took to execute your JavaScript code in your browser. So by the specific character of client-side profiling is they can measure this value. They can measure how JavaScript execution executed, and how long it took to execute the JavaScript could measure by client-side profiling tools. So by doing this, you can identify the function or code segment that consume high process time. Also, we can see even in the Java script what are the inefficient algorithm, and also if there's any expensive DOM manipulation or heavy computation that could optimize if you know the Java execution time, uh, JavaScript execution time for your client side. So also like JavaScript execution time, there's another important measurements is in the client side profiling is rendering performance. So rendering performance is measure the time it takes to render your web application on user device. So when we analyze the rendering time, you can tell you can actually tell the layout calculation time. That may be not familiar, but that is something we can use to optimize the performance of client side. Also, you can see the faint operation time. So client side faint refers the process of visualizing element directly on your client device. So without, actually for this, without, they don't, we don't need server side processing. It like it only happens in the browser level. So we can identify inside the rendering performance, we can measure paint operation performance as well. Also, you can, it's include that the time taken to render each elements to your web page. Right. So last thing that I want to discuss in uh, discuss in here is user interaction. Uh, In code level profiling, you can track your application interaction with your users, such as click, scroll, form submission, and other actions. So it will provide you a good insight on how user engage with your application, and it will it will help you to optimize the user's flow. Okay, so this is all about client-side performance testing. As much as cloud level profiling is important, that client-side profiling also a important fact. So if you use these both two technique, your for code is good and your client side is good. Now you can see how how you can utilize the early performance technique there. So before I wrap up, there are few topic in my hand, but I'm not going to explain it in deep, but I will give you some insight on it. The next technique that I would like to talk about in profiling, like early performance testing technique, as is called database performance testing. So what is database performance testing? It is to achieve optimal performance. So just like code profiling, we could do a database profiling as well, and we can identify the performance matrices in database level, and also could identify the bottlenecks and optimize the database configuration. So just like code profiling tool, almost all the database tools have this profiling tool to profile their database. So SQL Server has a SQL profiler. So query profiler for MySQL also there, and also Oracle also has a inbuilt performance profiling tools. Other than that, we can use the third-party tools like New Relic, Dynatrace, and App Dynamics, and it will also give you a good insight or database level performance. Right. So those are the things that I would like to discuss on as strategies of early performance testing. So there's a I think other than these all of these techniques, we have we have another concept called continuous performance testing. But typically, continuous performance testing is once you release your like product to a production, you could see you could evaluate this product performance like continuously after you release into the production. So that is called continuous performance testing. Mostly we use CI/CD tool to do the continuous performance testing. But what I suggest here is we can do we can add the same continuous performance testing concept as an early performance testing concept whenever and we can try out how it is, how our code is improving, how our client side is improving, how our database is improving. So you can have a good product at the end. So what I suggest is whenever you do a code profiling and you do it at the feature, like if you are developing an important feature, so you can do a code profiling. Once you once you did the code profiling, you can identify the issues if there are issues, you can fix it, and you can try to do another profiling with their fixes. So likewise, you can continue that process even in the early development stages, and you can gain a good product, and you can get good performing product when the time comes for actual full performance test. So that's what I have to share with you today. So if hope you have gained something out of this session. If there's any questions, wait for a few minutes. If you have any questions, you can raise in the chat so we can take a few minutes to discuss. So there's one question. What they're asking, can you give us a demo on how can do performance testing when what do you mean? You mean I'm not sure whether you mean the early performance testing or the full performance testing. So I will explain both to full performance test together. But we don't have enough time to do a demo. But I can. I'm not sure how to answer that question. So I will give you a brief how to do. Okay. So when it comes to the full performance testing, it's mean that we have a stable product. Once we have a stable product, what we can do is we can run a full performance, like a full performance cycle, as I mentioned in the beginning. So what is full performance cycle? So we should have a test environment. We should have identified the what is the expected load that you are expecting for your application. Like, let's say you're expecting 1,000 users for 1 month. So we are going to test for that user base. So you should have a script for the critical workflows, and you can execute the test, full performance test. So when you execute the full performance test, there are different type of tests you may have heard. First one is load test. Load test mean that we are testing with the expected load. Expected load means we call it peak load. We are trying to test our application with the expected load and see how our application is work with the expected load. Okay. Then once if your application is having any issues, you can identify by monitoring resources like server resources, DB resources, and client side resources, obviously. And also you can see matrices inside your tools as well. If you are using JMeter, you can see some matrices inside the JMeter. So if you if you have done a successful load test, then you can think about how our application will perform with the increasing load. So we call it stress test. So we increase the load and we test the performance. And then if your stress test is okay, then we can test for a long-term duration, like 4 to 3 hours with some load, and see how our application will be behaving for a long-term duration, like we call it endurance test. So likewise, we can perform stress test, endurance test, load test, and spike test. Likewise, there are different type of performance testing method based on your objective, and by doing each of these tests, you can get specific results. Like let's say you're going to simulate the stress test. If you are simulating a stress test, what is your objective is identify the resource capacity by increasing the load. If you are doing an endurance test for long duration, what is your objective is to see your how when you have a application for the longer period of time, if when your application is on for longer period of time, is there any issues happens. So likewise, there are different objective and different type of performance tests that you could uh, perform. Like actually, I'm really sorry I can't demo it, but because it's not a simple process. But if you need any detail, uh, we can help you on with that. Okay, if you don't have any more questions, so we could wrap up this session. And thank you for joining 99X webinar series, and like and subscribe our channel and stay tuned for more upcoming webinars. Hope you'll have gained a lot of something out of this session. Thank you very much.